What is going on, everyone? Welcome to Therapy on Two Wheels. Today we're going to be talking about whether or not the US should be adopting a tiered licensing system for motorcycles. Let's jump into it. So this is probably going to be a highly opinionated topic because a lot of people disagree with this, but we're going to talk about and kind of argue both sides of why we should or should not have a tiered licensing system like you see in a lot of the European countries. I think most of them at this point have some type of tiered licensing system, and most of them are pretty similar as well. So I do have an example. I believe this is from the UK, one of a kind of a Reddit post that I was reading, and a lot of them are very similar in those European countries. But I wanted to bring up the idea of why we should think about implementing a tiered licensing system here within the United States and how it's benefited those other countries, at least for us overseas, from the United States. So just to give you an example, if you're not familiar with what a tiered licensing system is, the tiered license system, kind of a basic example of it, I believe this is the UK, is where at 16 years old you can start out on kind of a scooter or a moped that is pretty low power. It's probably 50cc that goes under 30 miles per hour, and that's what you can start out on when you're first starting to ride on the road with your motorcycle license. Now once you hit 17 years old, you can bump that up to an 11 kilowatt or 15 horsepower motorcycle. That's going to be like your little 125s, you know, if you've ever seen a Honda Grom or the Benelli TNT or the Kawasaki Z125. Those are examples of a 125cc motorcycle, or I think the Benelli is 130, but those are lower powered. They're going to have under 15 miles per hour or under 15 horsepower, and probably not get you into too much trouble, especially as a newer rider. It's really hard to, hang out the throttle and get yourself in a sticky situation because it just doesn't have enough power for a newer rider. Now once you do that, once you hit 19 years old, so that's your A1 license is what they would call it. Your A2 license, you can start that at 19 years old, and that can bump you up to a 35 kilowatt or 47 horsepower motorcycle. Now that's a significant jump from 15 horsepower up to 47 horsepower in a matter of 2 years. But there's also typically a big difference in terms of most individuals' maturity level between like 16 and 17 and 19, 20 years old, and especially beyond that as well. So when you're considering that big bump in horsepower, there's also a bump in the maturity level of the individuals that are going to start riding with those bigger powered bikes. Now, for example, I had ridden, my first bike was a Honda CTX 700, and that had right around that 47 horsepower bike, and that would be a fantastic second bike or first bike for somebody that is fairly tame with their throttle. I don't know if I'd give that to somebody that's 16 years old and just starting out on a motorcycle, because it did have quite a bit of torque as well. And it's another thing, it's not just horsepower, because horsepower on a cruiser and horsepower on a sport bike can also be very, very different feelings depending on the kind of weight of the bike and the ergonomics, and again how much torque the bike has as well. So there's different specs that are considered when you are looking at motorcycles. The next step up from that is going to be kind of an unrestricted license, and that can happen of one of two ways, or there's kind of a few different ways. But if you're 24 years old and you're just starting out on a motorcycle, you can get whatever you want. You don't have to go through that licensing system once you hit that age of 24. You can buy whatever motorcycle you want once you get your motorcycle license. You can also get an unrestricted license once you've had your A2 for 2 years. So if you did get your A2 at 19 years old, you had that for 2 years, and now you're looking to bump up. At 21 years old, you can have your unrestricted license and get as high of a horsepower bike that you want. So there are kind of differences compared to how long you've been riding, kind of your experience level and your age, which I think is fantastic. Depending on how old you are, how long you've been riding, can be your experience level is typically going to be greater. You're going to be a more skilled and more knowledgeable rider, and probably a more mature rider. Now, next up, we're going to talk about kind of an argument for why we should have a tier licensing system here in the United States, and how it might help us or impact us in a positive way. And the first thing is that it's going to keep younger riders from going out and buying later bikes, like 1,000cc plus sport bikes that have 200 plus horsepower for their first bike. Yes, there's plenty of people that go and do this. Not everybody regrets it, but I would say probably 80 to 90% of the people that start out on a bike like that regret starting on a bike like that. Because one, it's very hard to increase your skill level on a bike that's unmanageable for you at that age and that skill level. It's very hard to progress. It's much easier to master a 125cc bike, even in 3 months, 6 months, in this case a year in these European countries. And give a full year to master those skills on a motorcycle in general before you hop onto something that has way too much power for you and to get you in difficult situations that you're not ready to handle because you just don't have the skill or experience level for it. The other thing to consider is that it's probably going to keep motorcyclists and car drivers safer from those reckless riders that start out at a younger age on those bikes that are harder to handle. If you have a bike that can go over 200 miles per hour and you're 16 years old, you're going to want to use all 200 miles per hour of that bike every single time you go out riding. I remember that as a younger car driver at my age, at 16, 17 years old, and I had a 1996 Honda Accord. It was a V6, and I can go up to about 150, 160 miles per hour. And I took it close to that a couple times. I would go 120, 125 miles per hour in that car with other people that are around that same age, that are only 16, 17 years old with me. And it's just not a good idea. Now, we'll talk a little bit about that in a few minutes here, about car drivers and the horsepower in cars too. But as a 16-year-old on a 1,000cc sport bike, you're probably going to want to use all of the power of that bike every single time that you go out riding. And it can get you, as well as other motorcyclists if you're going to group, or other car drivers if you're in highly populated areas, or even pedestrians too if you live in more city areas. If you're not comfortable riding that bike and managing that type of power, you're going to injure other people, not just yourself. And typically you're not going to be thinking about that as a 16-year-old motorcyclist. The last thing I would say as a 4 or pro tiered licensing system is that it's going to create more informed as well as better skilled motorcyclists. If you're having that skill at a much younger age and you're starting out on a 125cc and you learn from that first, you learn how to become highly skilled at riding a motorcycle. When you get up to those 1,000cc sport bikes, it's going to feel much more comfortable for you, and you're going to be safer for yourself, and you're going to be safer for other people that are on the road. You're also going to be able to teach younger people as a younger person yourself. If you're only 24 years old, and that's still considered very young, at least for most people, as a 24-year-old, if you're able to teach that 16, 17, 18-year-old how to ride and how to become a better rider, because you could be on a 1,000cc sport bike potentially at 21 years old yourself, and you might have an 18 or 19-year-old friend that's just getting into motorcycles. You can help teach them to become a better motorcyclist and become more comfortable on that bike, so that within a couple of years they can step up to that 1,000cc sport bike if they want to as well. So it'll create a better community, it'll create a better informed community of motorcycle riders and more skilled motorcycle riders as well, because you're all going to be starting out at a lower level and progressing to a point where you feel comfortable to handle those higher power bikes. All right, now let's jump into the arguments against it. Why should we not have a tier licensing system? Well, first off, I think that, like a lot of other laws or rules in the United States, that should be kept up to the individual states. I don't think that the federal government should impose those types of limitations or restrictions on who can purchase what at what type of age. That should be left up to the states, just like many of the laws that we have right now in the United States. The second thing is that we can go out as a 16-year-old and buy an 800 horsepower car. So essentially, if you think about the Dodge Challenger Hellcat, or Dodge Charger, I forget which one it is, but the Hellcat has 800 and something horsepower, can go over 200 plus miles per hour. You can go buy that car at 16 years old if you have the money to be able to do that. You don't need to do anything besides pass your driver's test for your car license to be able to drive a car. That's all you need to go and buy one of those cars. And technically, your parents can buy it for you even if you didn't have a driver's license. Now, that's horrible. No 16-year-old should start out in a car like that. Yes, there are more safety features. Yes, you have the roll cage, you have you know, bumpers in the front and back. You're much more protected yourself in a car compared to being on a motorcycle. But that does not mean you're going to be any more safe. You can still kill or severely injure either yourself, other people that are in the car with you, or other cars or motorcyclists in a car like that. So if we say you can't hop on a bike that has, you know, 200 horsepower, then go 200 miles per hour, but then we say, oh, but you can go buy a car that does 200 miles per hour and has 800 horsepower, you know, how is that going to be fair in terms of motorcyclists versus car drivers? So I really don't think that it would pass unless we have some type of restrictions on cars as well. The last thing I would say kind of against it is that people are going to figure out ways around it anyways. Like I just mentioned, you can have a parent, a sibling, a friend go purchase that motorcycle for you that is a 1000cc sport bike, and then you could just go ride it illegally on the road. Most of the times, unless you're not getting caught or not doing anything super stupid, you're not going to get pulled over for any particular reason. And then one of the other things that I found out too as part of my MSF course, this was in Las Vegas, is that close to 50% of the motorcyclists that are riding on the streets in Las Vegas don't have motorcycle licenses. They never went to any type of courses. They never went to the DMV to get the motorcycle endorsement on their license if they already had a car driver license. They chose personally not to do any of those steps, to do it legally. So 50% of the people that are riding on streets in Las Vegas on motorcycles are already breaking the law in that sense. What makes you think that we're all of a sudden going to start following all these regulations? It might affect some people, the honest people that are not going to be doing those illegal things. Yeah, it's going to affect them. But for the ones that don't care, or they're going to do illegal stuff anyways, it's not going to stop them from going out and figuring out a way to get themselves onto a 1000cc sport bike, or in, you know, 2000cc cruiser that weighs 900 pounds. It's not going to stop them from doing that. You're only preventing the honest people from doing those things, not the dishonest people, not the people that are going to do the illegal stuff anyways. So I really don't think it's going to matter or make that much of a difference if we choose to limit or restrict the younger riders, because we're going to figure out ways around it. It's just in our nature. So I know it's a highly debatable topic. Let me know in the comments below if you agree, if you disagree, and your opinions as well of why we should or should not have a tiered licensing system within the United States. All right, like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell when you want to see more videos, and I'll see you all in the next one.